When that lead detective is dishonorably discharged, how many DAs would at that point say, we're walking away? And with that, I'm walking away.
NBC 10 News has the latest on the retrial of Karen Reed.
Hi, everybody. I'm Gene Valicenti. I'm joined by NBC 10's Katie Benoit and our legal analyst, Austin Dana, who's been with us before. All right, listen, the surprise today was that there was a motion for a mistrial on the part of the defense. Katie, why? What was the issue that would prompt them to ask for a mistrial?
Sure. So the prosecution brought up the absence of dog DNA on John O'Keefe's clothing. And this was the first time this had come up. And the defense had said, hey, this hasn't come up prior. We're moving for a mistrial. Remember, the defense alleges that a dog could have been involved in the death of John O'Keefe. And they have a witness on the stand today. They had a witness on the stand today who testified that she believes the injuries on John O'Keefe's arm are consistent with a dog attack.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Austin, does that make sense to you, this motion for a mistrial, or no?
It does, because the prosecution didn't put any foundational evidence that there was not dog DNA on the arm or on the sweatshirt of Mr. O'Keefe. And without that foundation to just get up and say that that evidence doesn't exist, leads the defense to then say, no, you can't do that. This is grounds for a mistrial. On the flip side, the prosecution said, we always plan to call rebuttal witnesses to testify about this issue. And the defense is on notice of it from the first trial. So the judge went down and said no mistrial. All
right, let's get to the clip. Robert Alessi for the defense asking for a mistrial. He says that's the only remedy for this breach on the state's part. Play it.
Defense has never brought up DNA or alleged absence with regard to the right arm of the hoodie. It's always been the prosecution. We were meticulous and assiduous in not doing it here. The prosecution needs to live with the consequence of its action. This is remediable, and I respectfully submit warrants only one ruling respectfully, and that is this trial must be declared a mistrial with prejudice.
All right. Responding to that is Hank Brennan for the state. Let's hear it.
Defense can pound their fists and yell as loudly as they want, but they can't change truth and reality. Whatever the motivation is for wanting a mistrial can't be based on a claim that the prosecution raised DNA for the first time with Dr. Russell at the Lanigan hearing. If we actually look at facts and reality, rather than making false claims about everybody in the courtroom and everybody else who comes in here, what we'll see in the transcript, and this is the December 22nd, December 12, 2024 transcript. I direct the court to the direct examination of the attorney who just accused the government of raising it for the first time. Despite his words, we have page 83, line 21. We have page 122, line 14. We have page 124, line 14. These are the words of Attorney Alisi on direct examination. And there are more. There are more. But that is enough for the court to understand that the representations are wholly mistaken by Attorney Alisi. Wholly.
Okay. All right. Austin, before we go on any further, this could be getting a little confusing for those watching at home. The issue is DNA evidence, the dog's DNA on the body. So just nutshell the argument. What is the argument over?
The argument is the prosecution didn't put that into evidence in their case in chief. They didn't call anybody to talk about DNA evidence on that sweatshirt and whether there was dog DNA on that sweatshirt. Because they didn't do that, now the defense is saying you can't come up on cross-examination and just bring it up and say there's no evidence of dog DNA. You didn't prove that in your case in chief.
Okay, so the state is trying to prove that there's no DNA, whereas Karen is trying to say there is DNA because the dog bit him, and that accounts for the scratches and the wounds on the arm. Now, Dr. Marie Russell is Karen Reed's animal expert, who says that those bites and scratches came from the dog Chloe. Set this up for us, Katie. She continued to testify today, and talk a little bit about what we're going to hear in that clip. She didn't reconsider the opinion after hearing about DNA. Talk about this.
Yes. So she formed her opinion before that. She knew there was a DNA testing done, and she did not. She did reconsider, but she did not change her opinion. She says and has testified that she believes that the abrasions are consistent from a dog attack, and she's actually testified multiple times. There's been some questioning of her without the jury present prior to this trial and the last trial. She has spent a lot of time on the stand testifying about this. And today prosecutors were kind of asking about her methodology, and so is this is a bite mark, is this a scratch mark, what's this, what's that, because there are quite a few injuries, abrasions on his arm there.
DNA or not, she's saying it was a dog bite. I testified to that. Let's listen. This is the
Give
continuing
your
testimony.
opinion. You didn't even know about that DNA testing, did you?
Not initially, correct.
But then once learning about it, you were not willing to reconsider and change your opinion about the source of these scratches. You maintained the same opinion you had before, correct?
I reconsidered, however, my opinion did not change.
What you suggested is there's possibilities, is the word you would use, possibilities why there were errors with the DNA. Yes?
Yes.
You can't tell us anything based in fact. Wait,
No.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
You can't tell us anything based in fact to support the claim that something was wrong with the testing of this DNA, can you?
Not in fact, but again, you have to go through a process. If you expect a certain diagnosis or a certain finding on a lab test and it doesn't materialize, and you wonder why, and you want to know, was the test done correctly, was the specimen handled correctly, et cetera, et cetera. There's a process.
Okay, she testified again today. Just before we go to Karen Reed outside court, I want to go back to yesterday when we spoke about Devers, the former Canton police officer who is now a Boston cop who was forced to testify. We know her story has changed. In trial number 1, she said, I saw 2 people, including the chief, out with Karen's car when it was in the Sallyport. They were there for a long time. Now she recants that story and says, oh, I was wrong. I've been reminded of the timeline. We got some comments. We may have left out this other part of her story, that she was pressured, coerced. She was with the Boston police commissioner. The lawyers were involved. For whose side? Go ahead and remind everybody what that's all about, Austin, and then we'll get to Karen Reed outside court.
So I think she made first statements during the FBI investigation to the FBI agents saying that she saw Higgins and Alpert in the Sallyport for a long time, or not Alpert, somebody else, in that Sallyport for a long time. She then said, no, that's a false memory. I said that, but that's not accurate. There was also evidence that she met with the Boston police commissioner before taking the stand. She says he just said, we're behind you, tell the truth. But it seems suspect because in all of her other testimony on cases, she's never been called into the commissioner's office before she took the witness stand.
Okay, and the implication or the insinuation is, yeah, your boss called you in and said, wink, wink, nod, nod. We're all together here. We're all in blue, right? You know what to do. Okay. By the way, that hasn't been proven, but that's certainly a speculation within the middle of this trial. Now, what about lawyers trying to previously influence her testimony as well? There's all kinds of talk about they gave her the script, so to speak. Katie, you fill that in, then we'll go to Karen Reed.
Sure. So when this officer testified yesterday, she had said that when she talked to the defense and said that, this is not my story anymore, I didn't see what I thought I did.
Right.
They allegedly were saying, you need to say this. We're going to threatening her with perjury. So when the cross-examination came about, there was a lot of questions from Hank Brennan. He had a very relaxed tone asking these questions kind of about, did you feel bullied? Did you feel nervous to testify today because of the way the defense treated you once you said, hey, that's not what I saw?
Okay, well, let's go now to Karen Reed. This is kind of a lengthy walk out of court with her. They ask her, are you going to testify? What will the Waterfall witnesses say? That's one of the bars involved where they've been out drinking. Third-party culprit defense. Who did it? Today's testimony with where that tail light was broken, either at the scene when Karen hit him or it was broken when she backed into O'Keefe's car at an earlier time. You hear some ovation from the crowd, and then she's finally asked her emotions over this motion for mistrial being denied. I don't think she was surprised by that. Go ahead and roll it, and then we'll react.
Aaron, are you definitely not testifying? Because we saw your suggested jury questions or the jury instructions, and it said, as you know, the defendant did not testify?
Oh, they're boilerplate.
Okay.
Those are boilerplate.
What about-
Do you want to testify?
There's no, Karen, there's,
I'm ambivalent, and by ambivalent, I could get on board with either one. I feel strongly either way.
how did Dr. Russell feel?
Fantastic. She's just honest.
What will the witnesses from the waterfall say tomorrow if they testify?
We'll have to wait and see. We'll have to wait and see.
How about the testimony?
Karen, why no request for a third-party culprit instruction in your jury instructions? Are you still going to argue third-party culprit?
I have not seen those instructions, so I can't answer to what you're asking.
How about your the testimony today? What sort of stood out to you?
That the taillight was not completely smashed. I think the word the independent cop, as the prosecutor himself called him, was it was not completely smashed. It busted in at 3 p.m.
How did you Terry Poll?
That's all that matters.
How did you feel when your motion?
Earlier in the day,
Yes, it was after 5:07. Earlier in the day was 8:23. Brennan's last question was, did it look like the photo in the driveway at 8:23? Yes, it was broken up.
So when do you allege that your taillight was tampered with?
It's on video. We all know when it was taken.
Was it Sallyport? Is that when you're saying it happened? In the Sallyport?
how do you feel about the
I think he might have been.
right?
And his testimony has changed. He was subpoenaed by the prosecution and said it was damaged and not completely broken a year ago. He said that again today.
How did you feel about your motion for the trial being denied?
Expected.
How did you feel about the motion denied? Expected. The beauty of this debrief is you get to see how the sausage is made. And we often don't hear everything in the sausage. So the mics are all over the place. There's a gaggle. People are chasing her out. So it is what it is. You're getting a little taste of how the news is put together. All right, Katie, what's next?
Sure. So tomorrow there is expected to be a witness to testify that was at one of the bars out with the group with John O'Keefe hours before he died. And then it's also possible tomorrow a plow driver could also testify that was out near 34 Fairview the night of the party at the Canton House party.
Okay, Austin, you still don't think she's going to testify, right? That would be your advice if you were her lawyer. Do not testify.
I don't think she needs to at this point. Generally, as a course of action, I wouldn't have a criminal defendant take the stand unless I feel like it's absolutely necessary. So probably not.
Okay, all right. Thanks for today. We'll see you guys again tomorrow. That concludes our retrial for Tuesday in the Karen Reed retrial, or our daily debrief of the retrial. Thanks for joining us. I'll see you on the news at 6.